Hello and welcome. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all of you guys who took a time out to send a text on our behalf. Unfortunately, this year we didn't win, but it means that the bar has been raised. We need to work harder this year so that next year we come back with the award. But thank you very much. Today we're looking at agricultural and land tenure system, the battle for land space. Farmers are saying that the available land is being encroached on by these big, giant real estate developers, and that very soon a matter that will be discussed. But is it actually true? Are real estates really consuming all the lands and that farmers don't have anywhere to farm? What is the real situation on the ground? Indeed, is there any law that says this land is designated for farming only and that you shouldn't build on? What are the rules? What are the regulations? I'm here to discuss this. When I come back from the break, I'll introduce my guests, but I have a gentleman from real estate, I have a lady from lands, and I have a gentleman from the Farmers Association. When I come, I'll introduce them and the conversation will begin as to who wins the battle for land. My name is Nana Sakwa, and this is PM Express.
Mr. Chairman, please, a lot has been said about way forward to promote agriculture so far as our team is concerned. But there is an humble appeal, one or two I would like to drop, about our land tenancy agreement, that's acquisition of land for agriculture. The rate at which estate developers are taking over land, if we should import tractors and bring all the technology and the agronomic practices on board, and yet there is no land for us to cultivate, there will still be hunger. The rate at which the land is going, 100 hectares for estate developers just to develop it and sell it at a very good price to make a good living.
Well, so that's the issue on the table. Where's the land for agriculture? And with me in the studio is John J. Wonu, who's a Ghana Peasant Farmers Association member.
Ghana National Association of Farmers and Fishermen.
Oh, okay. And then to my immediate left is Barbara Sewa Asamoah, who's Deputy Minister for Land and Natural Resources. So, gentlemen and lady, welcome.
Thank you.
John, I'll start with you. John, is there a real concern with available land for farming?
We are losing farmlands gradually. If you travel between Akosombo and Tema motorway roundabout, within the past 15-20 years, you will notice that most of the lands that used to support our farmers to produce vegetables, between Michel Camp and Afienya, we have lost most of those lands to estate developers. The Accra Place itself has been an area that used to hold a lot of cattle grazing, and that is why the late president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, actually built the tannery at Aveime to support these cattle and other crops, and also the sugarcane farms. But you'll be surprised that we are losing it at a very fast rate, and I think something should be done. And I share the concern with Mr. Manti, the 2012 best farmer. And I also appreciate what he's going through personally with regard to land guards terrorizing him, trying to encroach on his farmlands. His farmlands is gradually reducing in size. And I think it's a big problem that we should all address.
Let me bring Barbara in here, sorry. Barbara, between Akosombo and Tema, lands are being lost, available lands for vegetables. What do you say, or what are we doing about it?
Thank you very much. The issue with land in Ghana It's a very huge issue and has been a problem for a very long time. And government is working very hard at trying to resolve some of the issues. But with farmlands, most of the lands in Ghana, between 70 to 80% of land is customary tenure. That means it's owned by families, clans, stools, and skins, and they have absolute control over those lands. And so they actually give out interest in those lands to developers, whether you want to use it for farming. So you realize that all these areas that we are talking about, once upon a time, were allocated to these people to do farming. And when development gets closer, then there is a need for people to have access to land to do other things apart from farming. And because government doesn't have direct control over those lands, you cannot actually force the landowner to use the land in a particular place. So what government does is to have a development plan for the area. One of the major problems that we have had with this development plan is also because of multiple ownership of lands and associated with multiple sales. And so whilst government is trying to ensure that people conform with the development plan regulations, one land has been sold to about 3 people. One of them wants to use it to develop real estate. Another person wants to use it for farming or something else. You realize that the person who wants to use it for real estate may have money to develop very fast, because our farmers in Ghana, most of them don't have the requisite amount of money to. So whilst you are trying to even register the land commission, trying to regulate the use of the land, you go there and you realize that the estate developer is far ahead with development. And in most cases, that also explains why most of our developers don't have documents to the land that they have developed, because the area may not have been marked for farming, for real estate. And because he's got to buy the land from the landowner, by the time if there's no litigation over the land, by the time he gets to the lands commission to register interest in the land, he has built to a very far stage. And when they go there, it's difficult to go and say that you are going to demolish those areas, because he has not encroached on anybody's land. The only thing that he may be at fault is that he doesn't have permits to construct those buildings. So those become the issues that we have to deal with. And that is one major problem that we face. And you know, this happens mostly in the peri-urban areas like you're talking about. It's not only from between Accra and Akosombo. If you go to between Kumasi and Ejiso, between Takrade and Effiokuma, all those areas, you realize that we face some of these problems. And when you go to other jurisdictions, you realize that even in the middle of cities, there will be land demarcated for, say, the plantation of vegetables or cattle rearing or other things. It is because of their land tenure, and because of the nature of our land tenure, you and I know that if, for example, somebody has a large tract of land in Osu and the person has reserved it for, say, vegetable plantation, people would think that the person is not right up there. Because we don't also know the value of some of these things. That is why we are having those problems. So as he said, government is putting in, the main problems stems out from our land tenure system. And because these lands, about 80% of them is controlled by the customary land tenure, and that is why we have problems controlling this. That is why government is putting in measures to let the customary owners themselves realize the importance of some of these things, so that when we have a development plan, and they would agree with us to go by it and respect the regulations. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult, because you cannot force somebody to do something or one thing or the other with his own land. That is the main problem that we have. Okay,
I'm going to take a little break. When we come back, I just want to find out that as a state, even though I own my land, I mean, can the state come in and say, with this land, 30% has to be reserved for farming, 20% for schools, 60% for accommodation, and no matter who you sell it to, 1,000 people or 50 people, they can only use it for this purpose. And why aren't we enforcing that? So when we come back, I want to find out, are we doing something like that, or how is it that farmers are today complaining that between Akosombo and Accra, which is a really large area, are losing available land for vegetables? Stay tuned. The topic today is available land for agriculture and the battle they are facing with urbanization and real estate development. I mean, once the population is growing, are we going to sleep outside and grow vegetables, or are we going to sleep inside and not grow vegetables? And that's the discussion on the table. However, just before we went on a break, I was wondering, as a state, do we have any policies to say between Akosombo and Accra, 30% of the land should be left for irrigation or for some sort of farming, and then X amount for school, X amount of offices, so that it doesn't matter who I sell my land to, they can only build on it or they can only farm on it? So I'll come to you, Barbara. Do we have any rule like that, that this is how this area should develop?
Thank you very much. What we are trying to do as a nation is to have development plan. Every district in Ghana is supposed to have a development plan, and when that development plan is in place, that is where you have the areas zoned for agriculture, schools, hospitals, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, we've not been able to come to that stage yet. Most of the district assemblies do not have development plans, and so the state is now under the Lab 2 project, Land Development Lab 2 project, is assisting all the land agencies and development agencies in the various districts to come up with spatial framework, what we call spatial framework. And once that is done, you'll be able to zone the area properly, have proper maps, and demarcate the areas so as to know where you're supposed to have schools, hospitals,
so how about the enforcement of it?
Yeah, as I started saying in the beginning, because these things have not been done properly, it is very, very difficult to enforce the regulation. The regulations are there, all right, but because you don't have the proper maps, you may not even be able to tell at any point in time that this area is supposed to be for farming. By the time you go through the books, look at the maps to know the development is at a very advanced stage. But once you have all these things, so what we are trying to do now is to digitize all these things so that at the press of a button, when somebody brings you a plan, then you will know that no, this area is not supposed to have buildings on the land, and so you will not register the person to go in. And then you will also be able to trace the activities that happen there, so that these things do not happen. But until we have this framework, it will be very difficult for the regulators to be able to enforce the regulation. The regulations are there, all right, but as we know, you need to get the other supporting equipment to be able to enforce the regulation. So Lab 2 is concentrating on helping, for example, town and country planning to have a very proper map and spatial framework for most of the districts and the MMDAs in the country, so that once they have these maps digitized, then they'll be able to properly monitor the activities of everybody, estate developers, farmers, and whatever, so that everything will be in shape.
Before I go to John, I want to stay with you again. I mean, here we are. We've seen a few demolitions where people have built clearly where they are not supposed to. But then we all become suddenly Christians and, don't do that. It's a very expensive house. It costs him money. And why are you breaking it? So why do we always allow it to happen? Look at the Wager Dam. The land left for the floods when the spillover. Anytime they open it, the people who are built in the spillover zone come up, come and help us. The media, let the government come in. So why do we and people are still building?
Yeah.
So You know, where is the problem?
Yes, then we'll go back to the land tenure system as we were talking about. So now what we are doing as a state is to set up customary secretariats for our traditional authorities to give them some training for they themselves to get proper land management so that they'll be able to conform with the rules and regulations. Because as I said, if somebody owns land and he sells the land to somebody, before you even get to know, the authorities get to know that this area that somebody is putting up a building, the person is not supposed to build there. The building would have been at a very advanced stage. And you see, because the land has been sold to the person by the landowner, he will not come and report that somebody is building at a place where he's not supposed to build. And by the time a good Samaritan comes to draw the authorities' attention to it, the building is already at a very advanced stage. And then when the law enforcement agencies try to do their work, then you hear all these, as you said, people coming in civil society, even at times the media, everybody, and it becomes a war, as if the law enforcement agencies are waging war against development. And so what we cannot do it alone as a ministry. We will encourage every Ghanaian, civil society and the media to help us to educate Ghanaians to know that you cannot build everywhere. It is even important to leave some space as green so that you can have fresh air to breathe. Because as you know, trees are supposed to absorb the carbon dioxide that we breathe in, so that we breathe out, so that the trees in turn will breathe the oxygen that we also need to take in to survive. And so if we find ourselves building all over the place, it is not healthy for our development as human beings in the first place. And then that is where you also find people cultivating vegetables by the drains and all unwholesome areas for us to consume. But if we have areas that are demarcated for the plantation of vegetables, then we can be sure of eating healthy vegetables.
Let me bring John in here now. John, I mean, with urbanization, population is growing, houses are coming up, and amidst all that, you know, is it fair to say let the farms move behind the cities, or do you want the farms to be within the cities?
You know, everywhere all over the world, we have urban and peri-urban agriculture, where we farm within in order to feed the people. About some 20 years ago, behind the trade fair site, you have farmers, vegetable farmers association. Now the whole place has been taken over. And one interesting thing is that we know that there is a land use policy in this country. And in our primary school days, when you have the geography of Ghana, where you have the various areas that the various crops have been identified. So at least it should give anybody an idea that, well, this particular place is suitable for this crop or that. And within the political or administrative structure, these assemblies are supposed to supervise all these things. You have the planning officers, you have people who are going around, they know the developments are happening. But they don't have permits. And they wait, the foundations are dark and the buildings spring up. And also, you notice that they destroy the environment. They go and remove the earth, the soil, to come and fill some of the flooded areas in order for them to build, destroying the environment in the process. So I think it's up to all of us to put our heads together, because if I can produce cocoa and I cannot take the cocoa to Cote d'Ivoire because Cote d'Ivoire's price may be better, and through regulations, government has put in the regulation that unless I sell my cocoa to cocoa buying agency or any other institution that is designated to do that, then it means if that law will work, then it should be applied in every situation, so that people should not be doing, because we are a state, it's a social contract that we have signed, and people are being paid to do a whole lot of things. So it must start from the municipal, metropolitan, and district assemblies. They must try to enforce that. Otherwise, we are losing our farmlands between, if you go to La area that I was saying, they used to produce a lot of vegetables. Now, they don't have any jobs. So you find all the women, the farmers, around selling in the streets. And that is what is happening between Dawenya and Sege, you find a lot of buildings springing up. And those are the areas that supports cattle rearing and that. So eventually we have to import meat. So we must have a land use plan, and we must be able to educate. There should be some kind of.
Are you engaging the chiefs?
Yes, at the Ministry of Agric, where I also serve on the METASIP, that is the Medium-Term Agric Investment Plan. It's a multi-stakeholder group that even the president of the steering committee is a chief. Mm-hmm. But you know, as institutions, we are not strong enough to disseminate information regarding government policies, and that is one aspect. The sort of coordination and collaboration is not there, because government says that, well, this is what we should do. When we all meet together, we have to go back to our constituencies where we represent in order to carry the message. So if the representative of the chiefs is serving on that committee, he should be able to go back to the House of Chiefs so that the chiefs should be aware that now you cannot just sell the lands before you sell any land, because there are regulations. You cannot even lease a land beyond some amount of acre, but people are doing it. And Lands Commission may also be part, because they are the people who are offering the titles to them. Because you should not be able to register any land above is it 2,000 acres or so? I don't know. I'm not sure of the figure, but there is something like that. So if they will condone, then it means they are actually depriving farmers from getting their lands to cultivate.
Nana, if I may come in here, you know, most of the time what happens is that we ourselves, we have seen that this is a challenge, and we've started. It has to do more with education because of our land tenure system, and we started engaging the chiefs on that level for them to understand. What happens is that if an individual is registering a number of acres in his private name, then you have cause to. But if it's a company, then it becomes a problem. And what we have also noticed is that maybe one person can have several companies, and if he has 1,000 acres of land and he wants to register and he knows that he cannot do it, he will just petition the land between the companies and he will have his way. So it is not all the problem, but meanwhile, the landowner may know that this land belongs to one person. So then he must provide information to the Lands Commission so that we'll be able to act on it. So it is not that most of the time Land Commission, they have their own problems, but they don't condone as John. It's not all the time that, but most of the time too, it is information that is not available to them. That is why we are appealing to the general public that if you have any cause to believe that something fishy is going on in any land administration, let us know so that we'll be able to correct it. That is why we are saying that everybody must come on board so that we'll be able to resolve some of these problems.
I mean, I must say, at our traditional council, which is the Akwamu Traditional Council, we've had land guys come about 3 times to do the education on, you know, this. Don't sell your land and don't lease it this way. So we've had that education on land, and I believe they're going around. They didn't just come to us, they're going around.
You know, in fact, just last week we were in the Upper East. We met all the paramount chiefs, and even this time we meet Queen Mothers wherever we go. And I must say that it's having a huge impact. People are beginning to understand the issues and they're appreciating it more. And with the establishment of the customary land secretariats, the chiefs are now beginning to get involved in the proper management of land systems, land administration systems. And so it's a process, but I'm sure we will get there.
The process has been frustratingly low, and I'll go back to John. The process has been frustratingly low. Why is it that, you know, in this day and age, 2013, 2-3 people can buy a same plot of land? I mean, it's not acceptable. I mean, I don't know what problems, because I'm sure you'll be farming and 3 people will come and say, well, it's my land, you know. Do you have those issues? Or?
Exactly, within the family. And, you know, if you travel between, you know, there used to be a railway line from Tema to the Shire Hills. And we sit back and we see people developing, I mean, removing the foundation for the rail. the pipeline from Bom to Tema, people are building on it, and we all pass. We see all those things, and you find out that there are a lot of litigations over those pieces of land because of that multiple sales. And I think it's an issue that we should, as a country, there should be some kind of...
There's no willpower when it comes. I think joining me on the phone now is the Acting Executive Secretary to GREDA, Sami Ameyibo. Sami?
Yes.
Sami, good evening.
Good evening.
My brother, you are taking all the lands and we can't get anywhere to grow vegetables, so we are hungry.
I agree the farmer has a concern, and it's a very genuine concern. And as you put it, as a state, we all have to sit down and look at the issue and see how best we can address it. If you look at the basic necessities of life, it is food, shelter, and then clothing. So if you have food and you don't have accommodation, you have a problem. It's the same way if you have accommodation and you don't have food, you also have a problem. So it's something that we all have to look at it. But I want to debunk my farmer friends' notion that real estate developers are taking over their land. What is actually happening is that if you look at the statistics that is available, real estate developers only contribute between 2 to 3% of the total housing stock in the country. This means that most of the developments that we are seeing is due to individual and private development and not from the formal sector of real estate developers. So the landowners are the problem. Who they sell the land to is the issue. If you sell land of, say, 4 acres or 1,000 acres to an estate developer, and you want to argue about its usage, it is easy. You are dealing with one entity. If you sell 1,000 acres of land to 20,000 people, you have 20,000 people to fight with. You see the difference? So if there is a structure in place to allow proper development to be carried out by well-structured estate developers, I'm sure my farmers' concern will be addressed. One of the problems also we are facing is that development is ahead of planning, instead of planning being ahead of development. If you have a planned area and you demarcate and state that this area is for farming, this area is for industries, this area is for that, who am I as a developer to come and change things? And then there's also lack of enforcement. If there is enforcement, according to the plans that the town and country planning has, we will also not be talking about this issue, and the farmer will also be happy. So it is a situation that needs critical attention. I was listening to our madam from the land department, and you can see that the problem is known to everybody. It's not that the land department don't know what is happening. The land administration don't know. They all know, except that we have allowed the situation to overwhelm us, and now it is becoming a problem of how to address it. But I cannot say that it is not too late. If we really want to be serious and we want to take this up and handle it, we should be able to do it. And for that matter, the issue of LAP, which is trying to put in place a very good land administration system in place, if we give them the support and they are able to do their work and then they bring the necessary report and we are willing to put the necessary measures and ensure that supervision is done and then it is enforced, I believe that all these issues will be addressed.
The enforcing bit is what surprises everybody. And again, I go back to Weja. And sometimes even we, the individuals, I think we surprise ourselves where you know clearly that any day this dam is filled, they are going to open the water, and this is exactly where the water will pass. And that's where I am building my house. And it's one of the most expensive investments everybody makes is to build a house. And yet still they'll go ahead and build it. And truly, twice in a year it will open, flood the house, and then they come running. Please come and help us. So, I mean, the sensitization, I mean, why do you start? Because I don't have a clue. How do you do this? I'll start with Barbara.
Yeah, that is why I said that these issues you are talking about also has to do with attitude. We live in a society where somebody will go and buy land He knows very well he's not supposed to build. He will start building. If government or the state law enforcement agencies tries to do the right thing, hell breaks loose. And then when he's in trouble, he comes back to the state for assistance. So all of us, we must get involved in trying to have some attitudinal change. As for the sensitization, it will continue. But then if the person doesn't yield, there's little you can do about it, especially because of the land tenure system, as I've always spoken about. If the gentleman who spoke on the phone said that if he has bought land, then he's building on it, what can you do? That is why we are also trying to put in place have a development plan for all the areas, so that once we are able to achieve that, then you will know if you go and buy land and you're not supposed to build there, you build there, then the law enforcement agencies will come in. If your house is demolished, you will have yourself to blame.
Let me remember, John, as far as agric is concerned, as a state, I think we pay more lip service than we do the actual will to say that, you know what, we are going to make a change in this area. I don't know how you feel, but you're a farmer.
Well, the state, you know, the farming sector or the agriculture sector is primarily of a private sector activity. And we have to get our land inputs and other things and every market. You know, the state has gone out of the business of doing business because of some kind of guidelines from the World Bank and other things. So we have to grapple with access to inputs and equipment and everything. Now that they've come back through the back door with this agric mechanization and the buffer stock, and which is also not helping. But because we own the process, we own that is what we survive on. So, and that's what we our life. I mean, our living. So we try to make the best out of it. But you see, if you come to Accra, you find out that most of the government bungalows and the rest have trees. But then all these rare estates, I mean, I'm not talking about grader, but the houses that they bulldoze every tree, everything.
Yeah.
They remove every tree cover and put up houses. And that's also affecting agriculture. And I don't understand maybe whether when you are sending your plan for approval at the district assembly or the metropolitan district, whether they find out how many trees that you are going to plant to, I don't know. So we have a lot of work to do as a country. And I think the government must, or the institutions that are supposed to regulate and enforce, should be empowered. I'm very happy that of late, everywhere you go, you find police people, the police actually at very vantage points. And also the Food and Drugs Board, you notice the efforts that they are making to make sure that our drugs that we take they are very safe for us. So other institutions must also wake up, and government must resource them so that at least the right thing should be done. It shouldn't be a situation just around this Afinia, the police barrier, where there is somebody has actually filled the place more than 100 articulated tipper trucks. And when it rains, the other surrounding, it will affect them. And people were sitting down. I mean, the district assembly around, I mean, you see, people must be brought to the book. Why should a district assembly sit for somebody to fill that place to that level?
And knowing that it will flat other things.
So we have a lot of problems.
Discipline and attitude. After the break, that's what we're going to talk about. Discipline and attitude, and find out if indeed we are stuck with it, or there will be a change, and when will that change be. So stay tuned. Okay, back, you know, always the conversation goes on behind the scenes before we come back on camera. But we are looking at a very serious issue, even though it might seem trivial. But growing food closer or within urban areas, indeed, keeping it green so that you have oxygen to breathe and the plant to absorb your carbon dioxide as you exhale. And that's what we're talking about. The peasant farmers are saying, anytime there's a development, they are the first to go away, and everybody eats food. Developments are also saying that, look, the three basic things you need is food, clothes, and shelter. So what do we do? And then it comes back to our discipline and our attitude towards our state. You know clearly you're not supposed to build here, but we build. But I'm saying, if we haven't done all this to date, then what is it that's going to trigger us to do it? But Sammy, if I still have Sammy on the phone, I want to start with you.
Yes, I'm still here.
Sammy, if we haven't caught on to this idea that if I build here, indeed, I will be flooded. I mean, I'm the one going to bear the brunt of it, and still I go ahead and build, what then is going to ginger somebody to fall in line?
Yeah, we all have to be disciplined. We all have to be disciplined. I don't agree that anybody can just decide to be indisciplined, and we will also look on, especially the authorities like the Town and Country Planning Authority. We all have to sit up and ensure that what has been planned for any area is what takes place. And one of the problems we are also facing is that if you look at our country now, there is no structured attempt by, let's say, the state to find accommodation for its people. So people are always on the lookout and are desperate in looking for accommodation themselves. That is why everybody is trying to acquire a piece of land anywhere and is trying to shelter himself anywhere. But if we have a structured arrangement where there's a housing policy that is being followed through and through, in collaboration with, say, the Town and Country Planning Authorities, houses will be made available at where they are supposed to be for people to purchase or buy them. But when we don't have anything like that going, and people definitely would need somewhere to put their heads, then there's this attempt to be indisciplined. And for that matter, I will call on the Town and Country Planning Authority to take this up very seriously and ensure that land that has been marked for development are used for development, and the land that has been earmarked for farm is left for the farmers. But I also have to say that the farmers, I guess they have to understand also that as population increases, the need for housing space becomes also increased. And definitely it means that some of the farmlands that are closer to settlement areas will definitely be taken over, and then they will have to move a bit to the back. I remember in your introduction you made that proposal and asked the farmer whether that is not what it's supposed to be. I guess they have to understand that. And then also periodically, the Town and Country Planning review their plans, their structured plans that they have. After about 10 years or 15 years, they review. And then some of the farmlands that they may have earmarked in the past, they sometimes release them for estate development. And for that matter, maybe if the farmers are not aware, then it means that there's a lack of flow of information. And then we believe that the Town and Country Planning will have to involve all stakeholders, the chiefs, the landowners, and then we all understand where we are going. If we all agree that 100% of land that was left for farmers in the past cannot be left 100% for them, and that we need to take about 20 or 30% of it, and then we reallocate other lands which are maybe a bit hinterland for the farmers to get space. We need to structure all this so that nobody goes home feeling unhappy.
Let me bring Barbara in here. Barbara, I mean, aren't we luxury even build on green fields? Because in other jurisdictions, you can only build on brown fields. So you go and look for a disused factory, buy it, break it down and build. But here we are, destroying greens and using it for development. I mean, are we looking at a system where we say, listen, we need to now protect greenlands. You guys go and find some brown fields and start building on. Or land that cannot be tilled and build on them. Maybe it's too salty or something is not good for agriculture. So that's where you can use for estate development. Are we thinking along those lines?
Fortunately or unfortunately, we are blessed with land that's wherever can be turned into greens. And so I think that developments can coexist with farming as well. All that we need is proper planning. So that if we have a proper development plan in place, and it is followed to the latter, people comply with the regulations, we'll be able to have a situation where we have a whole community with at least, say, 15 to 20 acres left for farming, and we'll still have all the necessary accommodation, hospital, school facilities that we need within that community. So it all boils down to proper planning. And once we are able to go through with Lab 2, which is tackling this issue seriously, I hope that we'll be able to jump that hurdle. As I said already, we've gone very far. By 2016, we are supposed to finish with Lab 2, and with the time frame that we have now, we are even ahead of schedule. So we'll be able to do all these things. And once we have the plan in place, then we can even begin to prosecute people who deliberately flout the laws. So that if you are not supposed to build at a place and you build there, we are not only going to demolish your structure, but maybe also go ahead and prosecute it. Then it will serve as a deterrent to other people who develop anyhow. So, as I said, gradually we are getting there. Now that these issues are coming up, we have the opportunity to discuss it. Everybody gets interested, and it's a way forward. All of us will come together and then find a solution to it, so that people will know that even if you have bought your house, you have bought a plot of land and you want to build on, there is the necessity that you can leave some space for the greens, which is very, very important for your own health and also for the other people who live around your community.
John, as for cattle and animal rearing, they have to leave the city now. I mean, as for them, we can't live with them. As for your lettuce and your peppers and stuff, by all means, we have to find space for it. But cattle rearing and stuff, they need to be in a confinement or far away.
Yeah, that is why we have to invest in infrastructure. If you are landing in Rome, just at the airport, you see a lot of cattle around. And we must invest in ranching, and that is what we need to do. But if we don't do that, if I should transport the cattle to Germany at the farm place area, and I have to transport them back, you look at the cost, and we don't have the transport infrastructure. You are aware that even in the US and Europe, before you don't just walk cattle like we do in Ghana. There are transports for them. And also, if we have to move our farmlands across beyond, we don't have refrigerator containers to bring in fresh vegetables into the cities. It's going to add up to the cost. And at the end of the day, you tell us that it will be cheaper to import than to produce. Already, production cost is going very high. And the climate change and all those things, the way they are cutting even all the trees, as if when there's a tree in your house, witches will come and... so we need a lot. I mean, and we should plan it in such a way that urban and peri-urban farming should coexist.
But why have we left it so long?
Because even government lands like the Dowenya and Weja projects, they are government lands, and I don't know, and you have government officials there who are there, and people are, and the security, because they are public officers and they can relate to the security officers also better than the individual people. But they sit back and all the lands are there, and now there is no land to farm.
Barbara, I'll come with you. And I don't mean this to say this government, but however, if he had been somebody who was going to take a ballot box from somewhere, we would have stopped it by hook or crook. There's no way any government at any particular time would allow anybody to take a ballot box. But we can watch somebody block a whole waterway or fill the whole land to the detriment of others and say, oh, the regulations are still in the pipeline and this and that. So it's as if our will as a people, as a state, towards land crime or land indiscipline is not that strong. Okay,
I'll give you a simple answer. Because when it comes to the ballot box, people are so vigilant that people will spend the whole day
standing there
and guarding it. But when it comes
what everybody should do now, be vigilant with land discipline.
Of course. And so if we, with the vigor with which we watch ballot boxes, if we watch other things like our lands, like our even projects, government projects, like our schools, like our hospitals, then Ghana would have been a paradise. That is why we are imploring that. Well, if you listen to my friend John, and you also listen to the greater man, everybody is talking about the authorities, but the authorities cannot do it alone. That is why we need everybody on board. You know, we live in a country where if you are, let's say you are even in a trotro, somebody drinks water and is throwing the sachet then out of the vehicle onto you the one who will say, oh, please, you are doing the wrong thing, you are the wrong man. Everybody will come after you. Why are you the one who will clean the place? That is not how we build a society. We must be each other's keeper. If you know your brother is doing the wrong thing, let him know that he's doing the wrong thing. By all means, once we continue talking about it, it will tell on people's conscience and they will know. And that will, in a very long way, will also help the law enforcement agencies to be able to do their work.
I don't know, have I still got Sammy on the phone? Sammy, have I got you?
Yes, I'm still here.
Just a quick one before the show. Is there any area demarcated for high rise? Because you seem to be building, you know, taking too much space for too little families. Are you thinking of going up?
Well, yes, there is. I mean, with some of the redevelopment that you are seeing in some of the prime areas in Accra, it's part of the town and country planning policies or the review policies that are in place. That if you break down a single-story structure in, say, airport residential area, which was originally occupying one person, this time they are looking at going vertical, meaning you go up so that it accommodates a lot more families. But with our virgin lands, or the lands that are competing with the farmers also, we are looking at the madam is laughing. we are also looking at the possibility of going vertical also, because we realize that our horizontal development is taking too much space, and we are encouraging most of our developers to go into vertical development, except that is a bit capital intensive. And so if we don't get some support or some structured arrangement, it is going to be difficult for it to be adhered to in total.
Thank you very much. Do you want to say something quickly before I run up?
Yes. As a deputy minister in charge of forestry, and I would like to support what my brother, my senior brother said, that please, when you are thinking of building a house, think of planting trees in the house. And if you are able to do that, at least create a little space for 1 or 2 trees in your own house. And you can also leave at least about 10 meters square for some gardening, and then it will go a long way to help us, especially those of us living in the city. I have given myself a target that I want to plant 10 million trees. What about you? How many trees are you planting? So every Ghanaian must make the effort to plant a tree today. Thank you very much.
Well, 10 million trees. I've only planted one so far. It's about this high.
Oh, I've planted more than you have planted.
Only
one.
One tree.
Oh.
It's about that high. So I think I've got a lot more to go.
For me, I think that the state has a role, because if you leave everything to, you see these land guards. That is the reason why people are protecting their own lands. Recently, there was a shootout as somebody was killed. So the state has a role to play, and we must follow up. I mean, we must investigate those who are committing those crimes and bring them to book.
Land guard is a whole different issue together. You know, well, maybe tomorrow, I don't know what their schedule is, but I'll speak to Barbara again, get Sammy. I know John is going off to Tamale, so we can get him, see if they have time, so we can come back and talk about this land issue into detail. Land guards, where did they come from? Are they necessary? Where are the police? This whole story. You've been watching PM Express. My name is Anansa Kwa, and as I say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again.